when we were putting this together and thinking about this event, it was a thought that was going through my head. And you know, throughout our lives, we literally meet hundreds, if not thousands of people. But I think that when we look back, we can probably identify a select group that have probably had a real positive impact on our lives. And you know, for us, well, me in particular, because I've known you guys a little longer than Stephen, that special group of people is you. So we decided we'd like to do a little something special just to say thank you for having such a positive impact on us. And not just professionally, but personally as well. Because I know that for me, the thing that I cherish the most is really the relationships that I've had with you folks, some going back as far as 30 years. So we put together this event that we call your Backstage Pass to Broadway, just for you. So, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Okay, we ready to have some fun? Great. Well, as most of you know, our mission is to help people achieve their dreams. And our special guest tonight has successfully pursued her dream by becoming a Broadway star. She's traveled a long way to be with us tonight, and we're really excited for you to hear her inspiring story. And she's going to perform for you later, so I know you're really going to be thrilled. But before Stephen and I bring her out, I want to tell you a little bit about her. Our guest this evening is not only a world-class performer, but she's an inspiration to thousands. She's a singer, an actress, author, speaker, and a living Broadway legend who's best known for her record-breaking run on Broadway in The Phantom of the Opera. Sandra played the leading role of Christine Daae for 10 years and more than 1,500 performances, longer than any other actress in Broadway history. Her mission to empower other people's voices currently has her back on stages across America as a keynote speaker. She's the author of a book called Your Creative Soul, Expressing Your Authentic Voice, and she has been on TV numerous times, including The Oprah Winfrey Show, CNN, The View, The Today Show, and many other national broadcasts. So would you please help Stephen and I give a warm welcome to Sandra Joseph.
Hello.
Thank you for that very generous introduction. I was thinking my mother would get a kick out of the legend thing. She'd be like, please. I'm from the Midwest. They don't allow such talk.
They don't allow.
Sorry, I will do it for you.
Well, welcome. It's good to see you again.
Thank you. I'm really honored to be here. I don't know if everyone knows about my little situation that happened.
Yeah, a good number of folks do.
We had scheduled a different time for this event, and I had a klutzy accident while out to dinner with my husband on our anniversary at the French Laundry in Napa Valley. I got up to excuse myself, go to the ladies' room, and promptly twisted my ankle and broke my foot. So I had to cancel and reschedule, and I was dreading making that phone call to say, guys, I can't walk, I'm not going to make it. And I'm just taking this opportunity right off the bat to say a public thank you to you both. They were so gracious and lovely and sent me flowers. Yeah, and I just appreciated how you guys really took it in stride. They were cool. We'll reschedule, and I'm so happy that we're all here tonight.
Oh, great. It's good to have you.
Thank you.
Great. And we're really excited to be able to take everybody behind the curtain of a living Broadway legend.
So let's jump right in.
Jump right in.
Start back at the beginning in Detroit, Michigan, yes.
Yes.
And so you must have developed this dream at a pretty early age, or at least some idea, right, of what you wanted that big future to look like.
The big future dream. I guess it started when I was very young. I was raised watching all the great movie musicals, The Sound of Music, and even like Mary Poppins, West Side Story. But when I was really bitten, as they say, was when I went to see theater, live theater for the first time. Now, you're all spoiled being right next door to Broadway. I was in Detroit, but thankfully the national tours come around. So when I was about 8 years old, the national tour of Annie came through. And I remember vividly sitting there in my seat, and the minute that little girl came out there in her red dress, I was just taken. Like, I was being struck by lightning. Like, everything in my body came to life and said, I want to do that. It was very clear to me what I wanted to do, but certainly not clear whether or not I'd ever be able to do it.
Right. Yeah, so that's great. I mean, very few people at that young of an age, know what they want. But what's really the likelihood of a little girl in Detroit making it through Broadway?
The likelihood, well, I think the odds are stacked against anyone trying to go into show business. In fact, the latest statistic that I heard from the Actors Equity Association, the Professional Theater Actors Union, members of the union, so you have to work pretty consistently to even be able to join the union. And at any given time, the unemployment rate among union actors is 88%.
Wow.
So the odds are not great of being able to find work. Yeah. So it seemed like the most outrageous dream imaginable for someone like me. I mean, I was a shy kid, insecure, introverted, did not want any part of the spotlight. Right. I had an outgoing sister who took care of, talking to people, and I would just hide in the background. So it was a very far-reaching idea.
Yeah. I think a lot of people can relate to that idea of I know what I want, but really, how am I going to get there? And so for me, and I'm sure for a lot of people here, what matters most in times like that is the support that we get, from the people around us and the encouragement. And maybe you could talk a little bit about that, specifically how your parents did that for you, how they showed you their support for you.
Yeah, I was really fortunate to have parents who paid attention, number one. They knew what was in my heart, even though I was afraid to go after it. I actually, a couple years after I saw Annie, I auditioned for a solo in my 5th grade Christmas concert, and I got it. So the night of the big concert arrives, and I'm lined up outside the gym, with all my classmates, and I happened to peek inside the gym doors, and I saw the crowd, and I freaked. And I ran over to my teacher right as we're about to make our big entrance, and I said, I can't do it, please. I was tearing up, and she could tell this was not going to go well, so she gave my part to somebody else. So I stood back there on the risers, and when the moment for my big song came, my big solo, I watched another kid from my class, a little boy, go out there and sing that song. And my parents, being in the audience, of course, knew that I was supposed to sing it, so they were like, what happened? And I was crushed, I was so mad at myself. Look, I'm still emotional 100 years later about it. But God bless my parents, because they just really nurtured my courage and kept nudging me forward. And it took a while. It wasn't until high school that I actually did a show. I started taking private voice lessons when I was 16, and my very first leading role, I was a little long in the tooth for it. I was 16, but I got to play the part of Annie, my high school production.
Finally, that's awesome.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. It sounds like, though, that you set that goal. So that was the foremost thing. That's probably what you got through those difficult times.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, when you know what you love, and I know you guys love what you do, and it's about the relationships that you create. When I did that first show, I really fell in love with singing and acting and dancing, and then you want to see how far you can take it. What else might I be able to do? I was not thinking Broadway. I was just thinking, I love doing this. Let me see what will happen. In fact, I did not major in music or theater. I got a communications degree from Michigan State University, close to home. Scared, it was fear. But again, my parents, when I graduated, I sat down with them, and it was my dad, really, who said, if you don't at least give it a shot, you're always going to wonder what might have been. So what if you give yourself a time limit? He said, give it 5 years. Go to New York, audition as much as you can. And they were not in a position to support me financially in doing this, but they supported me emotionally. So I worked every temp job I could get back in those days, secretarial stuff and answering phones at a social work office and schlepping all around the city to get whatever. I couldn't get hired in what's the stereotypical job that all out-of-work actors have? Waitress. I could not get hired because you need prior restaurant experience in New York. The competition, imagine what the competition is in New York City. There are a lot of actors there looking for those jobs. So I was rejected for that. But I worked in finance for a minute. I was in the mailroom at the Bank of Tokyo.
So if anyone wants a second opinion after, she'll be in the back.
I sorted mail at the Bank of Tokyo. That's as close as I ever got to Wall Street. That's what I did. I moved to New York with my 5-year plan, and I had my graduation money, which ran out quickly, and I auditioned like crazy and got rejected all over the place. Yeah. Should I cut to year 4.5? So year 4.5, I am living on a friend's sofa and eating like popcorn and peanut butter and jelly. I would see how long I could spread that one loaf of bread and the one jar of peanut butter throughout a month. It was bad.
Longer than you think, I'm sure.
Yeah. So I was about to pack it up and say, okay, the writing's on the wall. This is not meant to be. And that's when I got the chance to audition for the leading role in the Phantom of the Opera. Ooh, I'll talk about high stakes.
How did that go, right?
I just walked in and nailed the part. They gave it to me right away. No, it did not go like that at all. I was so terrified that first audition. So imagine being a kid from the Midwest, from Michigan. Like, Broadway, it's this mystical, magical place you never even dream you'll get to go. And all of a sudden, I'm standing on that Broadway stage. I couldn't even believe I was back there. I just wanted to go look around at the dressing rooms and see the costumes and everything. I'm on that stage underneath that chandelier, the famous chandelier, and Hal Prince, the director, who's like a god in the musical theater world, is sitting right there. And I could barely get the song out. I could barely breathe. I was singing and I realized my body is completely stiff and frozen. My shoulders are up to my ears. My arm is frozen in midair and I can't feel my legs. But eventually I finished the song. I had practiced a lot and the song came out and I did not get the part, but they did give me a job. They put me in the chorus on the national tour. Nice. So that was huge. How many of you have seen Phantom of the Opera, by the way? Oh, good. People. Okay. Wow. So you might remember this part. There's a part in the show where the Phantom takes Christine in a boat. Remember the boat scene? And they go to his underground lair beneath the opera house, and he sings his beautiful song, Music of the Night. Right. So at one point during that song, the Phantom rips off this big black cloth to reveal a mirror image of Christine, life-size in a giant frame. She's dressed as a bride, and on this big music cue, it's a mannequin back there. The mannequin bursts through the mirror and scares Christine, and Christine faints. So the mannequin goes like this on this big dramatic music cue. And then Christine faints and the song ends, right? So let me show you that again. Here's the mannequin's big moment. That was my part. Thank you. Thank you very much. I got to be the dummy. But I was so thrilled to be the dummy. Yeah. I would have done it.
It's all about getting that first break.
So goals are important, obviously, because without establishing a goal, you're really not going to accomplish much. We call that, I think Stephen said before, we call that your big future. So it doesn't matter whether you're 30 or 90. If you don't set a goal, you're probably not going to achieve what you want. The second thing, though, is that I know that you faced obstacles, and you kind of cut to the chase a little bit there, but the path that we take to success is quite different than the one that we envision when we start out.
Yes.
So maybe you can just talk a little bit about the obstacles, the journey that ultimately landed you on Broadway.
Yeah, that's such a good point. I think we set out towards our goals, of our big future, and hopes that it's just going to be a straight path, right? But that's never how it works. It's very winding, and there are times when you feel like giving up, and when it's looking like it's not going to happen. There were some really tough times during those 4 years of feeling embarrassed and like a failure, and like I was going to have to go back home with my tail between my legs. And so relying on the support of people around me was huge. Mm-hmm. And another thing that was incredibly helpful was the teachers and coaches that I had that kept encouraging me. And I know you guys, when you want to excel at anything, you've got to put in the work and put in the time, and not quit before that next big thing might be right around the corner, but you can't see it. In the midst of the struggle, it might look like everything is coming crashing down, but right around the corner could be the biggest opportunity of your life, and that was the case for me.
Right. That's very similar. We find the same thing. I mean, when we deal with clients, there are always obstacles that they face. So we try to help them, first of all, do research, find out what the obstacles are that they're facing. And the second thing is, as some of you know, we've asked you, we've surveyed you. Well, what are the financial obstacles you face, or just the obstacles you face in life? What's preventing you from getting where you want? And then sometimes we'll actually publish our findings. We'll be putting out some information, or a report on the 10 biggest mistakes people make investing. We'll make that available to folks a little bit later. But it's goals and it's obstacles, and set the goal, and you're going to have to overcome obstacles, because you're going to have to change directions at some point in time.
Yeah, right? Absolutely.
So you said that, the big moment, the mannequin thing, that's obviously not, what, made you as famous as you are. So talk about how you went from, that first break to ultimately landing your dream role. Okay,
so I did this for an entire year, 8 times a week, 8 times a week, an entire year, all over the country. Well, at the end of that year, the actress who was playing Christine, the leading lady, got another show, so she gave her notice. She was leaving. So the company flew me back to New York from the tour to audition for the second time. So there I am again on the stage of the Majestic Theater in Times Square, underneath the famous chandelier. Hal Prince, the director, sitting out there, and scared kid from Michigan standing on that stage. But this time I said, I am not going to freeze and be out of my body. I'm going to show them that I can move. So I gave them big arms and big choreographed steps and big facial expressions. And the entire time I could kind of feel like I'm trying really hard here to prove myself. That sort of like awkward, pushy energy. I could kind of feel it, but once I was doing it, I couldn't stop myself. So I finished that audition, and the assistant director pulled me aside and said, "What was that?" So back I went. Didn't get the part again. Talk about obstacles and letdowns, and it's one thing when you don't get the opportunity, but when you're given a chance and you blow it, even though you know better, it's rough. You really beat yourself up. Well, I really beat myself up after that.
No, we all do that.
Yeah, it was really rough. But ultimately, after a time of being really sad about it, I started to really look at what is getting in the way here. How am I sabotaging myself? And what can I learn from this so that if I ever get another chance, I don't make the same mistakes? And I realized, it's this clinging, grasping energy of wanting something so desperately. And sometimes we trip over our own feet when we try too hard. So for me, and I think a lot of performers and maybe even athletes, musicians certainly, you have to find that sweet spot between effort and letting go and complete surrender so that you can simply be present and authentic and in the moment. So after several weeks went by, my agent called and said, guess what? They still haven't found anybody to replace the leading lady. And they want to bring you back and give you one last chance.
Third time's the charm.
Third time on the stage, under the chandelier, Hal Prince out there. And truly, because I had sort of had that epiphany about it, I still wanted it really badly. But I just walked in there in more of a state of effortless focus, I would call it, of just being, I said, may I just be present and in my body and genuine, and let me just enjoy this moment and sing from my heart as though I am the lead on this Broadway stage. I may not ever get another chance to stand here, so I'm going to enjoy this moment and own it. And it was the simplest, most honest version of the song I had ever done. And they called me the next day and offered me the job.
That's awesome.
Yeah, thanks.
That's so great.
Thanks.
And it's amazing how sometimes that's the answer, right? Simple and
Yeah.
honest. That's great. So you find you got the role.
Yeah.
But getting it and keeping it for 10 years, that's two different things. So what
Yes.
did it take to do that, once you had accomplished that goal?
Oh, a lot of stamina, a lot of tricks of the mind. I'm sure many of you can relate to having to sometimes show up when it's difficult, or you can get into I could do it, I could phone it in, let's say, after several years. I could be standing on that stage singing those songs while making my grocery list in my head.
Right, yeah.
So you really have to find whatever works for you to continue to act as if it's happening for the very first time. It might be my 927th performance, but somebody out there is seeing it perhaps for the one and only time. So that's very motivating. How do I want to show up for that person? I think the best of us is drawn out when we're in relationship. You were saying before I came out how much all of your friends and clients here mean to you. I think we rise to our best because we care about each other. And I would think about my family going to see a show and how people save up. It's not cheap to go and see a Broadway show. And, I wanted that experience I wanted them to have the best of me and the best evening that they possibly could. So.
Mm-hmm. I marvel at doing anything for 10 years, but TV and movies,
Yeah.
I know, baby face, but acting in TV and movies, that's one thing, but theater is a totally different animal, right? No second takes in theater.
No second takes.
And for me at least, unless the chandelier falls in the middle or the stage collapses, I'm probably not going to pick up on those little things that don't go quite like you rehearsed.
Yeah.
But you obviously do. So maybe you could talk a little bit about a time when that happened and what allowed you to stay in character, because we all know the show must go on.
Yes, the show must go on. When you do a show over and over, there are bound to be things that don't happen the way they're supposed to. So one of my favorites was, so I talked about the boat, the scene in the boat. So people often think that it looks like the boat is run by tracks on the floor, right? There are no tracks on the floor. It's the coolest thing. It's run on an infrared system just the same way as a little toy remote control car. So there's literally a stagehand in the wings, off to the side, with a big box and a joystick, and he moves the boat all the way around the stage. It's wild. So one night, here we come, and we're singing the song, and we're just getting started on this big journey. It's called The Journey, the boat ride. And here we go. We're way upstage. And all of a sudden, boom, boat stops. So we're singing, and I kind of look over to the side, and the guy's like banging on the box, hitting the joystick, and he's like... So I'm like, what do we do? We're way up there, and we're supposed to be way down there. We've got a big, huge figure eight still to come. I mean, we couldn't continue from where we were. The audience could barely see us. So thankfully, I had a really smart phantom. He just stepped out of the boat, reached for my hand, and we walked on water for the rest of the scene.
Very biblical.
Yeah, what do you do?
Yeah, no, you got to improvise.
A little Bible in there.
Yeah, stuff like that happened with some frequency, I would say.
Yeah.
But for the most part, it's a pretty well-oiled machine. It's been running now, 28 years? It's still going strong.
Longest ever, right?
Yeah,
I think, longest running show in Broadway history.
Very nice.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
So you said something earlier, though, that caught my ear, and that was coaching. How important was it to have a coach, especially maybe during these difficult times?
I would not be where I am without the teachers and coaches that helped me, and I still study. I still take voice lessons. The dear, dear woman who taught me to sing, really, my best teacher, is retired and lives in Atlanta, and I fly there just to have her ears. Because she, hello.
Oh, you're singing, okay.
Is that a hint? Maybe it's the phantom.
Yeah. Maybe it is, yeah.
So you cannot do it on your own. And you have to, in my opinion, find someone you trust and someone that you really relate to that has more expertise in the area than you do. Right. And I will never stop studying with and relying on my coaches and teachers, because you want to continue to excel, no matter, it's for its own sake. I'm not trying to get another Broadway role. I'm not trying to prove anything. I just, for the sake of being the best I can be, I am very serious about coaching and training, and I speak to school kids, and I stress that to them all the time. And even people that I admire in business, they all have coaches.
I think that we can all relate to coaches. I mean, to maximize our full potential, I think hiring coaches is a must. I mean, we see that all the time. Michael Jordan learned the game of basketball from Dean Smith and Phil Jackson. Tiger Woods, Tiger Woods has had 20 coaches, I guess, or something like that.
Yeah.
JFK learned, was mentored by his father Joe, and even Warren Buffett, who's probably the most successful investor that we know, learned from Benjamin Graham. So, we use coaches. We hire coaches to, help us not only to run a better business, but also to try to find more value and try to impact as many lives as we possibly can. How many of you have hired coaches or used coaches or mentors, either for a profession or maybe a hobby, or maybe you've actually been a coach or a mentor to somebody? So,
so important.
Good. All right. Well, it's really important. So, well, that's fantastic. What a great story and an even better journey. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think we have a couple minutes. If anybody has a quick question, we have a microphone
Q&A.
floating around.
Someone is walking around with a microphone.
Fire away.
Shanna has a microphone back there. Who has a question?
We go. Wait, microphone.
Wait.
Microphone.
Oh.
So it's like Phil Donahue. Remember Phil Donahue? I remember.
So how did you get an opportunity to try out for the leading role initially, not after you'd been on the road for a while with a traveling company, but initially? How did you get that opportunity? Do you just walk in, or do you have to be chosen?
Thank you. That's a great question. There are what they call open calls, and the union requires the Broadway shows have those open calls, meaning non-union people can come in and audition. They have those every 6 months. So you can go to an open call. Now, often I would say the supervisors, the higher-ups, are not even at those auditions. It's more of like a pre-screening thing. But in my case, in those 4.5 years, I had gotten an agent. I did get an agent. I got cast in a small regional theater production in Yorktown, New York. And an agent from New York saw me in that and signed me. So I was actually submitted by the agent. So casting directors put out the call to say, we're looking for a Christine. And then agents all over the city submit a certain number of people. And in fact, this is another story about coaching. Ties in perfectly. So I was submitted the first time, and I was not getting an audition because there's only so much time in the day for the auditions. So they look at the resumes, and they don't let everyone whose picture and resume is submitted show up and audition. So I had nothing on my resume. I was cutting room floor. But I happened to have a coaching session with the pianist who plays for Phantom's auditions. I paid for this coach. I said, can I work on the Phantom music with you? And so we did, and he said, when's your audition? I said, well, I don't have one yet. I've been submitted, but they're not picking me. They're not picking me up. So he said, I think you're really right for this. Do you have a picture and resume with you? I was like, and he said, I'm going to hand deliver this to the casting director and tell them they should really see you. So without that coach, I may not have even gotten my foot in the door.
That's awesome.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's really good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everybody else?
So,
in your 10-year career, how many different Phantoms did you work with?
Oh, what a great question. Thank you. I counted once, and I've forgotten the number. Counting understudies and everybody, maybe 15 or so.
wow.
But actually, when I left the show, I took a really nice souvenir home. I fell in love with the Phantom in real life, and he's my husband of 13 years. Yes. How about that? Yeah, I married the Phantom. He's actually on the national tour of the Book of Mormon right now. So
It's a great show.
he's in Denver with the Book of Mormon, playing the role of Jesus. So his career has ascended. Oh, bad.
Is this the one that walked on water in the show?
It's not the one that walked on water, but he walks
same.
on water in other ways.
Good, good. Well,
Who did you inherit your extraordinary singing talent from in your family?
Oh,
Because most of us don't have that talent.
thank you for that. It's kind of a mystery. My sister also has a lovely singing voice. My mother, you could not pay her all the money in the world to get on stage and say anything, much less sing. My dad loved singers. I grew up with Sinatra and Nat King Cole and all the old crooners. My dad was super into it, but he was kind of tone deaf. So I don't know. And in fact, there's a very famous voice doctor here in New York City who has looked at the vocal cords of some of the most famous singers in the world, and he has all these platinum records on his wall and everything. And I asked him, when you're looking at the physical mechanism, can you see, like if you're looking at Mariah Carey's vocal cords? Do they look different? Is there something physical? And it was very interesting because he said there might be some sort of cartilage, slight difference that you could identify, but it's very minimal. And he said, I'll never forget it, he said, I'm an atheist, but there's something magical and mysterious that can't be put under a microscope. Isn't that kind of interesting?
That explains a
Well,
lot.
I'm very grateful. I'm very, very grateful, and I certainly worked hard at it and studied. But I do think, I could work hard at basketball for till my dying day, and I'm not going to succeed. I'm not going to get very far in that endeavor.
There must have been lots of opportunities that you passed up in 10 years doing that. What were some of those opportunities? And this may sound silly, but how could you do the same thing for 10 years? When we go to work, we can do something different. When you went, you had to do everything exactly the same. Didn't it get kind of crazy?
It did, yes. Thank you for that question. It got crazy. It really did a number on me after a while. So to your first question, so the other opportunities that came along, if you really look at all the Broadway shows that have come and gone, first of all, longevity is a rare thing for a Broadway show. They simply don't usually run that long. So to have stability as an actress and a stage performer is a real rare opportunity that you're hard-pressed to let go of. So that was one thing. Another thing was the role fit me like a glove. You have to be the right physical type. You got to fit the clothes. And vocally, my voice is really well suited to that music. And if you think about what's been happening on Broadway, a lot of what's been written in recent years, like the Andrew Lloyd Webber era was kind of the 90s, 80s, 90s. Phantom came out in the 86 in London. And what's happened more recently, you look at shows like In the Heights, and now he's got Hamilton, Lin-Manuel, who's the writer. There's rap, there's pop, there's riffing, there's belting, there's all kinds of styles. And frankly, I don't do those. I'm an old school soprano, classically trained, with a slight pop sound to my voice. So my voice is really well suited to that music. There really wasn't anything that fit me better that came along. And I knew that once I was done with Christine, I wanted to move on and do something different. That I was really done with Broadway. As wonderful as it was in the fulfillment of this dream, having done it for 10 years, I had a different perspective and wanted to do something completely different with my life. And a quick story about when it got crazy. In about the 9th year, I was really feeling worn out, and I told a friend of mine how much I was struggling, and he said, let's meet for coffee next week. So the next week, I sat across from him at this cute little coffee shop in Piermont. You know Piermont, New York? It's on water, but it's the other side, yeah. And we're sitting there, and he handed me one of the most priceless gifts I've ever received. It was a purple box, and on top of the box, he had stenciled the word perspective. Inside the box were clippings he had scoured the internet to find from people talking about what seeing Phantom meant to them. And some of these things mentioned me by name. And I sat there reading about, a family of 4 who the dad had saved up for a year to take the family on this trip to New York to see that show. And someone who took their mother before she passed away, and how he would always cherish those memories. I was so moved by really feeling in my heart what an evening of entertainment with someone you care about can mean to you, and that was incredibly motivating. So there are all kinds of tricks of the mind you can play to get yourself back into that moment, and I used all of them and more. But as I said, it ultimately, I think it comes down to love. Love for what I was doing, and love for people, and that real respect for the audience.
Yeah, how cool is that? That's a
Great.
great gift.
That's
Yeah.
great.
Do we have one other one? Or
One more question? Do we have time for one more question?
No?
No?
All right.
Good.
Oh, wait.
Oh, one more.
We
One
got a
more.
hand.
Well, I was just going to ask, are you really done with Broadway?
Oh.
But what are your new goals now?
Oh, thank you for that. I am really done. I mean, never say never, but I'm not auditioning anymore. I'm not pursuing it. This wonderful new chapter, the second act, has arisen in my life that is very humbling. I never saw it coming, but I'm so thankful. I get to go around and share my story now through keynotes. The book you mentioned was actually an audio book. It's a series of 4 CDs, and I'm working on a book now, because what I felt like I could wrap it up with a bow, and with deep, humble gratitude, say goodbye to that chapter and see what was next. And now I really, sounds cheesy, but I just love inspiring other people to move through their own fears and whatever holds you back from believing in your big dream. You call it your big future, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's what I'm about now, is like, what's your big future? What do you imagine? And the journey doesn't end ever.
Yep.
So this is the continuation of my big future, is just how can I think that we all reach a point where we just want to be the most useful and helpful to other people, and so I feel like I can do that better by the new challenge, which is being me on stage, not wearing the costume and the wig and the whole thing, but just being me.
Another new goal.
Yeah.
Well, you're doing a fantastic job of it,
Great.
and we thank you for
Thank you.
doing it
Thank
here
you.
tonight.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.